Hello and welcome to this week's edition of China Now, where we bring you the most topical stories happening in today's China. My name is Makiza Micheline Latifa. Let's begin the show with China currents. So many things have happened in China the past few days, and Chris will tell us all about them. Key amongst these updates is the Sino-American relations, where American President Joe Biden has signed an executive order that will limit U.S. investment in China. Also, in today's China currents, Chris will tell you all about the first ever Chinese chip-scale atomic clock, which recently commenced operations in Tianjin. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and many more.
China Currents is a weekly news talk show from China to the world. We cover viral news about China every week and also give you the newest updates on China's cutting-edge technologies. Let's get started. Hi, welcome to China Currents. I'm Chris. If you guys remember, last month we covered CIA Director William Burns' claim that the United States has made progress in rebuilding its intelligence network in China. In that interview, Burns also bragged about the United States' strong human intelligence capability in its spy operations. At that time, as we covered, the Chinese only issued a statement vowing to take all necessary measures to resolutely safeguard national security. On Chinese social media, the Foreign Ministry is often joked as the Ministry of Protest. The reason? Well, they protest all the time, yet barely take any action. But not this time. On August 11th, China's security agency announced that it had unmasked the CIA spy ring stealing China's military intelligence. According to the report, the suspect was an employee of a Chinese state-owned defense corporation. As an engineer, he had access to classified information, and the way CIA recruited him was so Hollywood. Once upon a time, our suspect was studying in Rome, Italy. He wasn't rich and there was this language barrier and stuff, so he was stuck in what might be one of the most appealing tourist cities in the world. Then a CIA agent appeared out of nowhere, taking him out to operas, attractions, bars, and for the best part, the agent paid for everything. By the end of the day, the CIA agent befriended him and then, "Hey Bill, we've got your brand new spy." From what we know, after returning to China, the suspect continued to provide critical intelligence to the CIA for a monetary reward. The official announcement did not state the time span of the spying activity. The suspect is now being held in custody. The news article was published by the social media account of the Chinese Ministry of State Security. The account has just been created 2 weeks before the announcement. The account marked the debut of China's top national security institution on the internet. Its first post on social media was titled "Mobilizing the Whole Society for Counterintelligence Efforts," echoing China's recently revised counter-espionage law. Additionally, Chinese netizens discovered undertones in this announcement. First, it's rare for state media to point out the name of the foreign agencies, like CIA in this case. Usually, the format would be like, the suspect was approached by a foreign intelligence agency. The mentioning of CIA has evoked a sense of urgency among many, suggesting that China is facing a direct threat from the United States rather than more generalized West or foreign power. Secondly, many people connect the news to the prior statement made by CIA Director William J. Burns, who said in public that CIA has made progress in rebuilding its spy networks in China. Online discussions have now depicted the bust of the spy ring as not only a retaliation against the US's aggressive move, but also a slap in the face to the Americans. Next up, we got another one on Sino-American relations. On August 9th, United States President Joe Biden signed an executive order that will limit U.S. investment in China. The order authorizes the U.S. Treasury Department to restrict investments in semiconductor, microelectronics, quantum computing, and certain artificial intelligence systems. It's expected to be implemented next year. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who had just visited China in early July, claimed that the order is to prevent U.S. capital and expertise from helping China to modernize its military, which will threaten U.S. national security. The Chinese government responded swiftly by stating that executive orders seriously deviates from the principles of market economy and fair competition and add pressure to the global supply chains. Furthermore, China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson called on Washington to reconsider the restrictions and create an enabling environment for China-US business cooperation. The statements emphasized China's commitment to an open and inclusive global economic system and urged the United States to adopt a more constructive and cooperative stance in addressing bilateral issues. It remains to be seen how these new restrictions will impact the already complex and contentious trade relationship between the United States and China. The executive order reminds me of what a wise German political economist once said: "The original suspect was England." But it's absolutely correct to describe present-day United States, if I may borrow. While openly preaching free trade, the state secretly defends its monopoly. Its free trade is a one-way lane. It's the alias for US dumping, not the other way around. Whenever we look closely into the nature of American free trade, monopoly is pretty generally found to lie at the bottom of its freedom. Next up, Huawei. On August 4th, Huawei launched its newest version of the operating system, Harmony OS 4.0. According to Huawei, it is 20% more fluent in operation and can extend battery life by 30 minutes in comparison to the previous version. Analysts gave this system high praise. Xiang Ligang, Director General of the Beijing-based Information Consumption Alliance, said in an interview that the Harmony OS 4.0 is superior to both the iOS and Android in terms of the function of AI-powered new language model adaptation. The first generation of Harmony OS was released in August 2019, soon after Huawei was sanctioned by the US government. Therefore, in addition to the anticipation of the new product, many Chinese consumers see the release of this system as a breakthrough for China in the tech war between the US and China. Considering the UO that we have just mentioned, it is reasonable to be optimistic that the US sanctions will only stimulate Chinese companies to develop further and quicker. Next up, China had just completed the first production line for chip-scale atomic clocks. This advanced production line has an impressive annual capacity of 30,000 units, and a core technology is developed independently by Beijing Huaxintai Science and Technology Company. Chip-scale atomic clocks play a crucial role in satellite navigation and deep-sea exploration. They were primarily produced by American companies such as Microsemi and Aurelian. According to the Business Wire, the global market for chip-scale atomic clocks were estimated to reach $490 million by 2028. Chinese netizens have aptly expressed their views, recognizing this achievement as not only a remarkable technological breakthrough, but also a significant step towards China's energy security. Next up, according to the Economic Daily, TSMC and its investment subsidiary, Vanguard International Semiconductor Corporation, had recently been cutting their prices for 8-inch wafer foundry services, with the highest reduction rate reaching 30%. For TSMC, which primarily derives its profit from 12-inch wafer foundry services, the reduction in prices for 8-inch would not have a significant impact. However, for Vanguard, which solely operates in the 8-inch wafer foundry business, this is undoubtedly a difficult decision. Considering the average production cycle for wafer foundry services is 3 months, the impact of this decision is expected to be reflected in the financial reports for October and November. Chinese Business Review suggests that TSMC's proactive price reduction is likely related to Texas Instruments, which lowered chip prices for the Chinese market in May, causing significant disruption to other chip design manufacturers. As a result, these manufacturers are hoping that TSMC and its subsidiaries can lower their prices to help them reduce costs to compete with Texas Instruments' price war. Next up, on August 10th, the core module of the Linglong-1, the world's first commercial onshore small modular reactor, was successfully installed in Hainan province. The final expectation of this project is to supply 526,000 families with more than 1 billion kilowatt-hours of electricity, reducing 880,000 tons of potential carbon dioxide emissions. Linglong-1, developed by China National Nuclear Corporation, is the first SMR to gain a license from IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency. According to IAEA, SMRs are advanced reactors with power capacity below 300 MV per unit. They have advantages in terms of efficiency, economics, and flexibility compared to traditional reactors. As renewable energy becomes the main trend, SMRs can be used to back up renewable energy, which depends on the weather and the time of the day. Although China doesn't need SMRs as much with the exception of island province like Hainan, its short construction period, high inherent safety, and low operation costs suit other countries with lower population and smaller power grid scale, and its competitiveness will help us better support the Belt and Road Initiative, experts stated. Next up, let's take a look at the Chinese college freshman. Recently on Weibo, a young man unveiled his collegiate acceptance into a major focusing on mortuary science. The curriculum he presented outlines various facets of the funeral industry, including funeral procedures and body preparation. Historically, the perception of the funeral industry in China has been shrouded in superstition and cultural beliefs. Many hold the view that it's a sector associated with death and misfortune, leading to a societal reluctance to embrace this profession. However, current trends indicate a transformative shift as the industry begins to appeal to a younger demographic in their career choice. The funeral industry's appeal is multifaceted. Primarily, there is a significant demand for skilled professionals in this field. Industry statistics suggest a talent shortfall of approximately 10,000 individuals per annum. With only 8 vocational colleges offering a major in mortuary science and fewer than 1,000 graduates each year, the industry practically guarantees employment for its graduates. Last but not least, Qiao Jie, a renowned Chinese public health expert, said recently in a forum that China's newborn population has declined by around 40% in the past 5 years. In 2022, the total number of newborns nationwide was 9.56 million. It is projected that the number of births in 2023 could be around 7 to 8 million plus. Qiao expressed concerns over the declining fertility rate among women of childbearing age. This includes further decreases in the number of women of reproductive age, increases in infertility, and high incidence of adverse pregnancies. If Qiao's prediction is accurate, 2023 could mark a new low for China's birth rate, which has been in steady decline due to factors like the one-child policy and increased cost of living. The continued drop in births will exacerbate China's demographic challenges, including an aging population and shrinking workforce. Qiao called for more support for women's healthcare and fertility services to address this issue. However, analysts say broader economic and social changes will be needed to reverse current trends. The government has eased family planning restrictions, but the birth rate has not rebounded as hoped. Well, that's all for today. Thank you for watching this episode of China Currents. If you have any thoughts and comments on our show, please reach us at the email address below. I'm Chris. I'm looking forward to hearing from you and see you next time.
Thanks for the updates as always, Chris. It's now time for Threshold with Lisa, and here is where we bring you the most exciting news on cutting-edge technological innovations happening in China. In today's episode, she'll bring you very interesting details in the field of research. Chinese scientists have discovered that the United States' advanced nuclear submarine could be detected by existing technology. I'm sure you're awestruck by this update. Stick and stay as Lisa unfolds the rest of the story.
Hi, I'm Lisa and this is Threshold in China. Today we are going to share some exciting tech innovations and announcements that happened in China last week. Chinese scientists have developed a new technique that could make even the most advanced submarines easier to detect. The breakthrough involves analyzing tiny electric currents induced by submarines' movement through seawater. The South China Morning Post claimed the research threatens long-standing U.S. undersea dominance. Submarines are critical to modern naval forces in a way that differs from large surface ships like aircraft carriers. While carriers project overt air power, submarines provide covert strike capabilities, especially nuclear deterrent. This asymmetric stealth advantage is considered essential for sea denial and control of maritime choke points. Submarines have been getting tougher to find lately. New materials and design help dampen noise and shield their magnetic signatures. Sonar and magnetometers are less effective than ever. Recent Chinese research may aid submarine detection using induced electromagnetic signatures. Here's how it works. When a submarine glides swiftly through the water, it disturbs the fluid around its hull. This churning seawater cuts across Earth's magnetic field lines, introducing weak electric currents. The currents create faint electromagnetic signatures, especially ripples in the ocean's natural energy field. Unlike sounds or magnetism coming from the sub itself, these ripple effects depend solely on water flow pattern. Submarine speed, shape, orientation, and cavitation all contribute unique detectable signals. Cavitation refers to the bubbling caused by pressure changes along the hull, and it is a crucial factor. As trailing bubbles oscillate, collapse, and detach, they churn up complex turbulence. This dynamic process generates especially strong electromagnetic field oscillations. By analyzing time, frequency patterns, and strengths of these oscillations, researchers can potentially identify submarine types and track their movements. It is a big advancement over conventional method. Sonar can be defeated with sound dampening technologies. Magnetometers are fooled by non-magnetic hull materials. But the laws of physics means any fast-moving underwater object can create flow disturbance and induce electromagnetic ripples. China's new system provides a way to exploit this phenomenon. It combines advanced sensor with smart software to extract submarine signatures from background ocean energy. The team has successfully detected signals from multiple distance and conditions. Yet, the breakthrough has limitations too. Turbulence and noise complicate signal analysis, and stationary or slow-moving submarines are practically invisible to this method. Much more research is needed to perfect and implement this technology, but it's clear that this new detection concept is poised to drive innovation. Undersea warfare may never be the same. Advanced scientific instruments like FAST and James Webb Space Telescope allows astronomers to see further and more clearly into the space. Building the instrument is important for obvious reasons. Maintaining it effectively over decades of operation is even more crucial. Without proper maintenance, the equipment will break down. This occurred with a Reservoir Observatory radio telescope, which collapsed when cable broke after years of underfunding and neglect. After that, China's FAST is now the world's only very large radio telescope. The 2,225 laser target distributed on fast reflector surface are an important part of the telescope control system, like the eye of the reflector. It is made out of aluminium sheet only 1 mm thick and cannot bear the weight of an adult. To maintain the reflector, Chinese scientists created a reflector laser target maintenance robot. The robot can automatically wash it and achieve maintenance of the laser target on the reflector surface, including cleaning, dismantling, and replacement. The scientists figured out how to get the robot moving all over a fast curved dish in all directions. They also developed ways for the robot to see and measure its surroundings in 3D, with complex reflections and shapes. And it is able to unscrew and swap out the laser target all by itself. The maintenance robot has successfully been applied in replacing and maintaining fast reflector laser targets. While building the new instrument gains headlines, the level of maintenance keeping the facility running decades after decade has even greater scientific impact. A team of scientists at China's Zhejiang University found that particulate matter air pollution is fueling the rise of antibiotic resistance worldwide. According to the World Health Organization, antibiotic resistance is one of the biggest threats to global health, food security, and development today. A growing number of infections such as pneumonia and tuberculosis are becoming harder to treat as the antibiotics become less effective. Meanwhile, airborne PM2.5 pollution, which consists of tiny particles with a diameter of 2.5 micrometers or less, is also a growing concern that affects millions around the world. These particles can come from various sources such as emissions from cars and factories, wildfire, etc. Exposure to PM2.5 has been linked to various health problems such as respiratory and cardiovascular disease, as well as increased mortality rates. The WHO estimates that in 2016, around 4.2 million deaths globally are attributed to the exposure of ambient PM2.5 pollution. And these two challenges the world are facing today somehow are intertwined with each other. The researchers analyzed data from 116 countries over nearly 20 years, finding significant links between PM2.5 levels and the antibiotic resistance. The particles can transmit resistant bacteria and genes to humans and animals by inhaling and ingestion. Once inside the body, these bacteria are harder to treat with conventional antibiotics. PM2.5 pollution impairs immune function, creating an environment ripe for resistant infections to take place and spread. The polluted setting also selectively pressures bacteria, favoring survival of resistant strains. In 2018 alone, antibiotic resistance caused an estimate of 0.48 million premature deaths globally, with staggering economic loss of $395 billion. It seems, rather than working independently, human health, animal health, and the environment are intricately connected regarding antibiotic resistance. The good news is that reducing air pollution can curb resistance. If the WHO guidelines limiting PM2.5 concentrations are met by 2050, antibiotic resistance could drop 16.8% with 23.4% fewer related deaths, potentially saving $640 billion. The rising geopolitical tensions are jeopardizing human space exploration. Indian scientists developed an astrophysics device called SING. The $50,000 instrument will be mounted on the Chinese space station Tianjin, marking the first collaboration between India and China in space. It is supposed to scan the sky in the ultraviolet waveband as it orbits the Earth and help us to understand the composition and behavior of interstellar gas and the birth and death of stars. With the International Space Station set to retire in 2031, Tianjin will become the only orbital outpost. China has welcomed world cooperation and 27 nations proposed experiments. 9 were jointly selected with the UN, including SING. If successful, it can become the first foreign payload carried on board the Tianjin space station. But almost a year after applying for an export permit from the Indian government, the scientists have heard nothing. The project leader says that SING is now sitting in a clean room ready to launch. It is unclear if SING will make it to China this year. With launch costs covered by China, it is an opportunity Indian scientists are hoping to seize for the benefit of space science. But without the approval from the Indian Ministry of External Affairs, it remains grounded by the gravity of geopolitics. And that is all for today's Threshold. As always, please let us know if you like this new section on science and technology in China, and we'll do more in the future.
Thank you, Lisa. We are thrilled with the strides that China is making in the field of science and technology. Let's now focus our attention on the Thinkers Forum, where our scholars and thinkers share with us their brightest ideas about China and the rest of the world. Today, Comrade Vijay Prashad, an Indian historian, editor, journalist and the director of Tricontinental, speaks on China's path to modernization, China's module of development, and other very interesting details about its political journey.
The first time I came to China was the 1980s. Obviously the 1978 reforms had started, but you couldn't see anything. It was about, 6 years or 7 years after the reform era started. Things don't happen that fast. The countryside was very poor. Shanghai was not, there were no buildings like this. There was that clock tower, I think maybe that clock tower was the tallest building. I don't remember, frankly. The road out of Shanghai was a small 2-lane road. It was very much a developing country. It was familiar to me in terms of what you see. And then China made rapid advances one way or the other. Some of it was extraordinarily good use of the kind of technology and science from other countries. The Chinese, the communists were able to attract science and technology, make use of it, improve the condition of expertise in the country. I mean, now it's amazing because you go into little factories, highly skilled people working there. Where did they come from? I don't remember them. I'm not that old, but I remember a time when there was almost nobody with those skills in the country. Suddenly all these things happen, very compressed. So China has a path to modernization which is pretty unique. Now, that doesn't mean nothing can be learned from it. Lots of things can be learned from it. And I'm glad that Xi Jinping is putting forward a number of concepts. Unite and prosper, win-win, China's path to modernization, China's model of development. At the same time, I was really quite interested in the 20th Party Congress document. It talked about China having modest prosperity. 700 million people raised out of poverty. That's fine, but now more. We've got to achieve other goals for human development and so on. So I think these are interesting formulations. The path to development, the path to modernization, unite and prosper, win-win. These are all interesting concepts. The issue is, how do we take these concepts and translate it into the reality of other countries? So if you take a country like Zambia, a very rich country because it has a lot of copper, but very poor because it has no capital. It's fundamentally in debt. Its political class is almost completely subservient to the West. They take orders from the West, effectively. People are quite poor, but it's a rich country. Now what is Zambia's path to modernization? It can't be the same story as the Chinese path. I was very interested to hear what Deng Xiaoping said in 1985 to the then head of government of Ghana. He said that, you got to find your own path based on your national conditions. So I think these concepts, win-win, unite and prosper, China's path to modernization, and so on, these are all very important to study. It's important to study what happened in China and what is happening in China, not to copy it, but to see if there are things that one can learn from the path to modernization. So I'm very sympathetic with this, but I also think that one of the interesting facets of the Chinese experience isn't to lecture people how to do things. I think that's very interesting and curious. Most people who have this kind of punctuated advance, so fast, you developed and so on, might get arrogant and might walk around the world saying, well, this is how you should do it. We did it like this, you should do it like that. See, the United States has a tendency to do this. People fly into, say in the case of Zambia, into Lusaka, walk into the president's house and say, you should do this, you should do that. It's the whole finger-wagging culture. Do this, do that. It's interesting. Chinese have a completely different attitude. It's far more humble. I think this doesn't come from 3,000 years of China. This comes from the communist experience. And I can be pretty precise about this. Because if you had an imperial system, imperial systems aren't humble. You're an emperor. You tell your people to go and put a decree out. Your local administrators, and this is all documented in the 19th century and 18th century, administrators for the emperor go out and tell people, you got to do this. But the communists changed all that. They don't have a policy of, essentially a language of command. Do this, do that. There's a different attitude, and I kind of like the attitude. When I see Chinese officials around the world, rather than have their hands moving like that, they sort of have it by their side, and they're listening and they're happy to share their experiences. But they don't tell people what to do. So, when I hear these concepts, China's path to modernization and, again, win-win is an interesting concept. It requires a lot of explanation because it looks simple, but it's not that simple. these are interesting because they are suggesting that, well, we're going to systematize a theory of how China was able to accelerate from 1949 onwards, not just 1978, but 1949. We've got to systematize our own story. That's a Chinese project. And then others can read the story, experience what's happening, and see what they can draw from it. But they have to create their own project.
Away from the Thinkers Forum, we turn to the China Political Economy Forum of 40, where Meng Jie from the School of Economics at Fudan University touches on the concept of the basic economic system of the primary stage of socialism in China.
抵浪文化的朋友，大家好，我是来自复旦大学经济学院的孟杰。在我们的政策话语当中，有一种表述叫社会主义初级阶段的基本经济制度，有3条。第一呢是公有制和非公有制并存啊。第二呢是这个所谓按劳分配和这个按要素分配并存。那么第三呢，我们把它叫社会主义市场经济体制。也就是说，市场和国家是2种协调方式，它们要相互结合，构成了社会主义市场经济体制。那么，当然这3条，我们可以说它有2种结合的关系。首先是3者自身是相互结合的，因为你公有制、非公有制并存，按劳分配、按要素分配并存，实际上就已经蕴含了什么呢？市场调节的作用。所以它跟第3条社会主义市场经济体制它是相互包含。但这里我还想谈到，它还有另一种结合，就是它每一条制度都是一个2元结构。你比如说，这边是公有制，那边是非公有制；这边是按劳分配，那边是按要素分配。所以这样来一看以后呢，还有一种结合，什么结合呢？一个它是从传统的社会主义经济制度演化过来的，另一边呢是从纯粹的市场调节演化过来的。当然，他们2者演化过来以后相互结合以后呢，他们各自的面貌也都改变了。所以我们一讲传统的社会主义经济制度，我们一般讲什么呢？公有制、按劳分配、计划经济。那你现在还有计划经济吗？我们已经不再把指令性计划作为调节整个经济的手段了。所以国家的经济作用，我们现在是国家发展规划、宏观调控、产业政策，是吧？所以这是我们现在国家经济治理的3种主要的方式和手段，它是跟市场相结合的。那么另一方面呢，市场调节，纯粹的市场调节，一旦跟我们社会主义经济制度结合在一起以后呢，它也不再是那个纯粹的市场调节。你比如说，通过国有企业的作用，国有企业也是自负盈亏、自主经营的主体，所以通过国有企业的作用，国家实际上也在市场内部发挥作用。所以在社会主义市场经济当中，我们说市场和国家它就不再像自由主义我理解的那样，2个是一个截然不同的2类制度，不是的，它们有机结合。通过这个结合，他们各自以前的面貌也改变了，所以这个结合更重要。所以小平同志呢，在改革初期就讲，资本主义有计划，社会主义有市场，是吧？我们要搞社会主义市场经济，讲的就是这个结合。所以这样一来，在社会主义市场经济当中，我们就有什么呢？一方面是跟市场调节相适应的国家经济治理，另一方面呢，是里面内嵌了国家作用的这个市场机制。你比如说中国高铁部门的自主创新，那么大家知道，高铁以前我们是一个在计划经济条件下是一个高度军事化的管理部门。改革开放以后呢，跟其他部门一样，我们引入了市场机制。在铁路部门，在高铁这个部门，通过这一系列改革，最终形成了一种建构性市场。什么叫建构性市场呢？它有2个特点。第一，当然这个市场是政府建构的，所以有一种说法讲市场经济，市场是最大的公共品。我们从铁路来看，这个铁路部门的市场当然很清楚，这是铁道部创造的，是吧？经过一系列改革，塑造了这个市场。但还不止于此，为什么呢？在这个市场形成以后，政府比如说以铁道部为例，它还持续的在这个市场当中起着领航和协调分工的作用。什么叫领航呢？它要引领这个产业发展的方向。对战略性、基础性产业来讲，我有一个目的，比如说我们中国发展高铁是为了解决我们这个中国铁路运力的问题，解决人民出行难的问题，可以说是为了实现这个满足人民群众对美好生活的需要。所以国家规划很早就制定了高铁的发展规划。早在2008年以前，在90年代，高铁的发展就进入了规划。最早嘛是京沪高铁，我们看政府怎么发挥引领的作用。 你比如说，在铁道部实施引进战略的时候，在2012年、13年到16年期间，他会选择整个部门内4家大的企业和外国企业合作，引进先进技术。那么这样做实际上是调节了分工，为什么？因为他赋予了这几个企业特殊的地位，显然他的地位比其他企业地位就要高。那么这些企业作为大的国企呢，他不可能什么都做，所以他接到任务以后呢，他会和其他企业进行合作，其中就包括很多的民营企业。所以在铁道这个建构性市场当中，我们看到这个对分工的协调呢，实际上是2级协调。最高级的协调，第1级协调，铁道部协调这些大企业；第2级呢，以这些大企业为中心，它在协调下面其他企业。那么你比如说这里有一个例子，国有企业当时涉及到生产高铁所需要的一种铝制品，那么他们当时需要的这个数量不是很大，因此一些大的企业呢，包括外国企业呢，不愿跟他们合作，所以他们就选择了一家民营企业合作。这个民营企业是个相对比较小规模的企业，所以这样一来呢，这个本来规模很小的民营企业生产铝材料的，那么后来就得到了一个非常好的发展，因为双方进行合作，这个搞了一些创新。第2，建构性市场还有一个特点，通过它，国家能够把符合国家发展规划的使用价值目标引入这个市场，将使用价值目标跟微观企业的价值目标相结合。什么叫价值目标呢？就企业是要追求利润的，但是另一方面呢，利润不是最高的目的，最高的目的是要实现使用价值目标，就是高铁的自主创新。那么建构性市场，当我们说不光是适用于高铁部门，实际上对所有战略性、基础性部门它都是适用的。国家当然在不同的形式上方式不一样，是吧？在建构性市场当中发挥领航和协调分工的作用，包括在光伏产业，在这个新能源汽车，是吧？这个实际上国家都在发挥作用，所以这方面的例子很多。所以建构性市场呢，我们如果这样看，可以看到什么呢？它实际上是社会主义基本经济制度的一个实现机制，而建构性市场呢，我们可以把它叫做一种中介性质。尤其从18大以来，以管资本的方式进行国有企业改革以来，有了更进一步发展。那么什么叫管资本呢？就是从以前的管企业，企业的人财物啊，国资委都要进行负责，到管资本，就是运用现代金融资本的运作规律，来做大做强做有国有资本和国有企业。所以这样一来呢，我们就有了一个3层的治理结构。对国有资本来讲，有国有资本的顶层治理，是吧？这是最上面一层。但是重要的是中间层，叫什么呢？叫国有资本的授权经营体制。所以从18大以来，近年来我们在中央和地方都组建什么呢？组建了各种国有资本投资公司和国有资本运营公司，这是国有金融类公司，它在资本市场运作，借鉴现代金融资本运作规律，实现国家进行这个战略规划的一些任务，完善国有经济的战略布局。所以这种改革深刻地塑造了中国的资本市场的风貌。那么对管资本改革呢，我们跟另一项改革还要结合起来看，就是什么叫国有企业分类改革。那么国有企业分类改革实际上是管资本改革的前提，是吧？这都是18大以来国有企业改革的重要步骤。什么叫国有企业分类改革呢？就是我们把国有企业进行分类。首先我们把它分成公益类和商业类。那么对商业类呢，我们又进一步划分，叫商业1类和商业2类。那么这样就实际上有3类。那么公益类呢很好理解，中国邮政就是公益类，任何国家总得有公益类的，提供公共品的、公共服务的这么一些国有企业。那关键是什么是商业1类和2类？1类是担负着国家发展规划战略目标的企业，还有一类呢是竞争性企业。那么当然竞争性企业呢，我们会鼓励它进行混合所有制改革，是吧？这个更多的这个和民营企业、民营资本啊相互融合，是吧？这是一类。那么还有一类是担负国家发展规划这种战略任务、战略目标的，这个就很重要。所以联系到刚才我们讲的中国特色资本市场呢，就这类企业、这类资本，是吧？国有资本投资公司要在这类市场担负这个任务。所以在这个意义上，我们讲这个18大以来国有企业改革呢，以管资本为核心的改革呢，深刻地塑造了中国特色的资本市场。它是国家实现自身发展规划、贯彻社会主义生产目的的一个重要的制度抓手。所以我们中国的产业政策，为什么我们通常讲它是中国特色产业政策体制呢？是吧？我们说的产业政策嘛，通常有政策手段，有目标，是吧？你比如说什么出口退税，这都是手段；各种补贴是手段。好，目标是实现某一个行业的创新， 新能源汽车的创新也好，高铁的创新也好，光伏产业的创新也好，是吧？所以有目标，有手段，所以产业政策总是一个体系。但是你为什么说它是产业政策体制呢？它一定是跟基本经济制度相联系的。体制，它是制度的一种实现形式。所以在这个地方，我们要讲到影响中国特色产业政策体制的一些中介性制度，是吧？你比如说刚才我们讲到建国型市场，然后又讲到了中国特色资本市场。建国型市场是一个产品市场，它跟资本市场还不一样，但资本市场是为建国型市场服务的，是吧？两个是密切结合的，是吧？在资本市场上的融资的这些任务，归根到底是要在建国型市场完成这个自主创新，是吧？解决那些对我们卡脖子的问题，它有这么一个特点。这里我们还想再提一下国有资本、国有企业的作用，对民间私人资本并不具有挤出效应，而是有挤入效应。那么这就涉及到为什么在战略性、基础性市场，国有资本要发挥作用。所以我们有些学者会总结这个市场有一些特点。你比如说，它投资特别大，对吧？投资额特别巨大，不确定性很高，也可能7、8年、5、6年更长都没有收益。这些行业对实现国家的雄心非常重要，但是私人资本却不可能进行充分的投资。另外呢，新兴产业的发展往往需要基础设施，没有相关的各种基础设施的配套，这个产业没法发展。而私人资本不可能承担这个任务，因为私人资本的投资总是要获得收益的，我不可能为这个市场提供公共品的投资，所以只有国家来干。所以也正是在这个意义上，为什么国家在战略性、基础性市场发挥作用，它会有挤入效应。因为国家作为不确定性的承担者，解决刚才我们所说的问题，才为私人资本的投资铺平了道路。那么美国市场经济呢是很有趣的。我们说这个冷战结束以后，美国的新古典经济学为主要核心的这个新自由主义经济学在全世界流行。那么所以大家有时候开个玩笑，就是美国这个经济学呢最大的忽悠是什么呢？是让全世界都相信美国没有产业政策。这是不对的。美国这个是最早实施产业政策的资本主义国家之一。美国的政治领导人汉密尔顿是现代产业政策最早的实践者。后来美国在20世崛起之后呢，我们知道在1次大战、2次大战，实际上美国在战争当中，政府在很多重大创新当中都发挥重大作用。那么2战结束以后，实际上长期以来也是这样。我们都知道苹果的技术很先进啊，我们都认为好像这是民间资本的功劳。但是有一项研究大概讲到，苹果大概有11项还是12项技术都是由美国国防部资助的。所以美国国防部实际上是长期以来是美国产业政策的一个重要的协调者。所以英国的一位经济学家就曾经写了一本著作，认为美国政府包括国防部，包括刚才我们所讲的一些政府机构，是一个企业家型政府。什么含义呢？企业家型政府，首先我们弄清楚什么叫企业家。那么企业家的概念来自著名经济学家熊彼特。什么是企业家呢？企业家是创新职能的承担者。那么熊彼特认为，这种承担者一开始是一些具有超凡素质的一些个人。企业家他的这个理性标准跟一般的经纪人不一样。经纪人是在一个既定条件下进行最大化的计算，实现利润最大化。那么企业家有什么特点呢？你比如说那个航海的哥伦布也是企业家，在很大程度上跟企业家很像，就他有企业家的素质。哥伦布根本不知道他出去航行的胜算是多少，这个远洋的航行存在根本的不确定性，不是任何统计能够计算的。所以经济学家区分了风险和不确定性。比如说我们说保险公司给你承保是基于风险，这个风险是可计算的，而根本的不确定性在市场经济当中存在的这种不确定性是根本无法实现计算。所以什么是企业家呢？企业家是敢于承担这种不确定性的人，这是他的一个重要特点。所以为什么我们把企业家和哥伦布做比较？那么在后来的理论发展当中，熊彼特又认为企业组织，一个组织可以成为这种创新职能的承担者，而不仅仅是个人，对吧？资本主义垄断大企业可以是创新职能的承担者，也就是说他承担了企业家职能。那么当然今天我们知道政府也可以所以为什么政府承担企业家职能构成企业家政府呢？就是这样，他引领这个市场的发展，他承担不确定性。
Here is where we part ways on today's edition of China Now. We are super grateful that you made time to watch today's edition of the show. I hope you had a great time as always and you have been adequately informed. Let China not be far away from you anymore. If you'd still like to know other things about China or share your feedback, thoughts and comments with us, please send them through the email provided below. Hoping to hear from you soon and see you same time next week.